Bali is reopening to fully vaccinated tourists on October 14. Who can visit the island and what are the entry requirements? Over the past couple of weeks, we have seen a lot of positive changes in the Southeast Asia region. If we consider how badly the region has been affected by the current pandemic, and we can see the incremental positive improvements, the really incremental progress that's happening, not only in Indonesia, but in the neighboring countries as well, I think we have more than enough reasons to be optimistic that this region very soon, it's probably going to happen much sooner than we think possible, because we've been waiting for such a long time, and it's very difficult to see it as it was before, or to believe it can actually be the same thing, the same concept, the same free life that Southeast Asia was before. Before we talk about who can visit Bali, Indonesia, and what the entry requirements are, I want to take a quick look at everything that happened so far. Since the pandemic started in March of 2020, the island has been opened and closed multiple times throughout the past 18 months. As a matter of fact, Bali's economy is dependent on tourism more than anything else. With that being said, it's in the island's best interest to open up the borders to international tourists as soon as possible. Nobody can tell me that governments, that people want this island to remain closed, because the livelihood of so many people is dependent on the number of tourists that visit the island each year. Without a doubt, the island has been drastically hit by the pandemic, leading to a massively declining GDP, gross domestic product. It left millions of people unemployed, and people need to eat, people need to provide for their families. And how on earth can they provide if the businesses remain shut? It is just not possible, and the government knows that. So with vaccination efforts really improving drastically, not only in Indonesia but across Southeast Asia, I can see in the near future how many countries will open up. Without a doubt, many countries will open up to fully vaccinated tourists, and possibly once most of the population in Southeast Asian countries have been vaccinated, then it's possible that even non-vaccinated tourists that are willing to provide a negative PCR test can come to Bali, Indonesia, without the need to quarantine. Bali has been in a recession, the first in over 2 decades. Historically, we're looking at a high number of unemployment, a declining gross domestic product, desperation, and poverty. But things are changing right now. Get excited, because now I'll tell you who can enter Bali, Indonesia, and what the requirements are for those looking to visit the island this year. The island is reopening to travelers from the following countries: South Korea, Japan, China, New Zealand, and also the United Arab Emirates. I know there's a lot of countries that are not included in this list. Australia is not even on the list. There's many countries that are not on the list because Bali, Indonesia is taking this time right now, this precious period, more of an experiment. They're trying to experiment to see what can happen when they will allow so and so many people on the island from certain countries, and they're pretty much testing right now. It's very comparable to the Phuket Sandbox program. It really isn't that different, because take a look at Phuket's program, you can see that they are only allowing people from certain countries as well. And there's also requirements, like you need to be fully vaccinated. In order for you to visit Bali, it is important, and it's the only option for you, is when you come when you depart from any of the countries I just mentioned before. You need to be fully vaccinated. That is a requirement. It is a mandatory that you are. If you're not vaccinated, even if you want to quarantine, you still cannot visit Bali, Indonesia right now. You're fully vaccinated. On top of that, you also need to quarantine for 8 days in Jakarta, Indonesia. Now you may think, well, why in Jakarta, Indonesia? Well, it's how they set up the program. You cannot quarantine in Bali. Take a flight from wherever it's going to be, from Seoul, from Tokyo, from any of the major cities in China, from Auckland, New Zealand, from Dubai. Doesn't matter. You take a flight into Jakarta and quarantine in Jakarta for 8 days. You're also required to test in Jakarta before you will be released, before you can go to Bali. I know this is not an ideal scenario because if you're fully vaccinated, the last thing you want is to quarantine. Maybe some of you are okay with quarantining because you want to get back to Bali, Indonesia, and you don't want to wait any longer. But remember, there is a cost involved. You need to pay for the 8-day quarantine that you have to serve in a government-approved hotel on your own. The government is not paying for it. You need to pay for it yourself. So add this on top of your costs. What do I think about the reopening of the island? Well, as in anything, there's pros and cons. On the positive side, something that is remarkable is that you will save money by going to Asia right now. Let me tell you why I say this. The reason why you will save money going to Asia right now is because there's fewer tourists. The whole balance is out of proportion. You just take a look at the accommodation market. There is a ton of available properties, pool villas, hotel rooms, hostel rooms, apartments. Doesn't matter what kind of accommodation we're talking about. You'll be able to get absolutely amazing deals because of the fact that despite of the island opening up, many people are unwilling to go to the island under the current conditions. Maybe they're vaccinated, but they are not willing to quarantine at their own expense. It's natural. We want to save money, or we don't want to go through the hassle. It's not for everyone, but for the ones who are willing to do it, on the positive side, I think accommodation is going to be much cheaper than usual. There's going to be so few foreigners going to Bali because they only are accepting flights from certain countries, and this whole thing is out of balance. Another big plus, if you want to visit any place in Bali, would it be beaches or temples, you want to go on tours, you can expect close to 0 tourists, which many would definitely appreciate because Bali is known to be overcrowded, overpopulated, huge trash problem on the island. You want to enjoy Bali at the best possible time when it comes to feeling free, not having to compete with thousands of other foreigners for services. Well, we don't exactly know how many people will come, but it is certain that fewer people will come than usual. On the negative, and these negative aspects are not only true for Bali, Indonesia, they're true for almost every place. You have to wear your mask indoors and outdoors. There's no escaping. You don't wear one, the police sees you, catches you, you'll be fined. Another con that I'd consider a big one, I personally am not willing to put myself through this, and that's why I'm holding back, is the quarantine upon arrival. Being in a hotel room, being locked in a hotel room for 8 days, I could not imagine. But some people are like, you know what, it's 8 days and then I go to Bali, I can stay for a year, so who cares? And you know what, I agree with you. If you see it this way, then you are perfectly okay spending 8 days in quarantine, even if you have to pay for it yourself. And like I said, most people won't come because it's not that good of a deal in their eyes. The people who won't go to Bali, they'll find other places. They will go to places where they don't need a quarantine, where they don't need to be vaccinated. There's plenty of options available. What do you think about Bali's reopening plan? Do you think many foreigners will come to visit the island despite the quarantine requirements? And how about yourself? Are you currently in Bali? Do you want to go to Bali? Are these conditions acceptable to you? Leave a comment below and let us know. I got 2 recommendations for you. 1, I shared a video on the best countries for single guys. If you want to watch this video, then click on the link that appears right here. 2, I shared another video on countries without entry restrictions. These are places that you can visit right now where you don't have to worry about following anything. And if you want to find out what these places are, then I highly recommend you watch the video that appears right here. Make sure to subscribe and turn on alerts to receive a notification when I upload the next video on travel updates, visas, and digital nomad locations. Thank you for watching.